We're back. Max, what's going on, man?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, my friend. Just out here in Colombia at the moment.
And how is that going for you?
It's basically coming back to DevCon. It's been about 3 years since the last time I went to a DevCon, so I'm super excited. I got to see Vitalik on Monday, which was amazing to me, and definitely looking forward to just meeting a lot of other folks in the space.
Awesome. Well, and thanks everyone for joining. We really appreciate it. We got some really good feedback from episode 1. This is obviously episode 2. We're really excited to be doing these for you. And as you can tell, we're trying to stay regular despite our current workload, our irregular sleep patterns, but we're doing what we can. We think there's a lot of cool stuff that we can do with this podcast, and we're really happy for your feedback, and we're happy that you're listening. If you're watching us, you're probably watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to us, we're available on Spotify as well. And thanks. Really appreciate it. So, a lot going on in crypto. Holy moly. I have been thinking, so just today, I was actually thinking, I have never been more excited to be in crypto. And, obviously bear market, a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people have left, a lot of jokes on Twitter that crypto Twitter has turned into a ghost town, which is partially true. The tourists have left. People that have been buying high and selling low have been burned again, and they're just, licking their wounds in a undisclosed location. But I think the real builders are still here. I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening, a lot of bad stuff happening. We're going to talk about that as well. So let's start with some of that bad stuff. The SEC is at it again. So just yesterday, it was announced that the SEC, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, the U.S. regulatory body, is going after Yuga Labs, and they're investigating the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT sale. Max, what do you think about that?
Yeah, guy. I think that this is definitely another situation where I would have preferred where the SEC does a more proactive approach in terms of approaching these projects, but they're just going at it, and they're just trying to, they're just trying to use enforcement. And I just think that it seems like a very dark approach at the moment, and thus I just am not so optimistic. As long as these things continue to happen.
Yeah, so our good friend Matt Niemerg from Alex
in the US
had a great point in the US. So our friend, co-founder of Aleph Zero, Matt Niemerg, had a very good point on Twitter yesterday that I totally agree with. And I definitely subscribe to this narrative. I've used this kind of explanation in the past. And he basically compared what the SEC is doing is it's almost like trying to regulate baseball cards or Pokemon cards or any kind of collectible. And the problem here is, where does it end, right? Because this is I'm actually very happy that okay, step back, pause. I'm not happy that this is happening to Yuga Labs and to the Bored Ape Yacht Club specifically. But I'm very happy that it sparked a debate in crypto, and that this problem, we were expecting this to happen, right? It was a matter of time before something of this in this manner happened. So I'm very happy that there is a very, very, very large blowback from the crypto community. A lot of times people in crypto have been not the nicest to Bored Apes and to their holders, because they're usually the ones that are losing their seed phrases or giving out their seed phrases to hackers and scammers. And there's a lot of just I think a lot of crypto natives just have a poor opinion of a lot of Bored Apes, or the majority of them. But I'm very happy that we're in this moment where we can discuss this, and hopefully we can do something about it. And I think it really comes down to talking to the regulator and explaining why this is just so absurd, right?
I agree with you. I agree with your statement about trying to work with regulators, and I think this is definitely the approach that one should be taking. For example, in the U.S., there's the Blockchain Association that is working on, lobbying efforts in the White House to make sure that the rules that that come out just makes sense for the industry. However, I just want to point this out that over the last few years, it's been a no-no to approach the SEC. And the rationale behind it is because there's been a lot of whiplash. In other words, there's no proactive talks. It's a matter of just enforcement. And thus, we've been definitely seeing this for a few years. And this year specifically, now that we're in a bear market, this is like projects are just easy pickings now.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And, you know, the SEC seems to be in a very, very weird place right now, because we obviously have the chairman, Gary Gensler, who's at the very top of the SEC. And there seems to be a lot of divide within the SEC itself. I have a theory, or at least an impression, that the SEC in its current state is slightly imploding. I don't know if you would agree with me there.
You know, I would say that the themes that Gary Gensler has been introducing are just starting to magnify now, meaning that it's materializing. And how is it materializing? It's materializing with the fines that we see. For example, Kim Kardashian a few weeks ago. Also this example of Yuga Labs. So I think just to kind of like rephrase it, I'm just saying that these themes were coming up years ago when Gary Gensler first got into the SEC. But now we're seeing these things.
I think they heard you. They're coming for you, Max.
Oh yeah, it's just the Colombian side music, ambiance music.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you there. So if anybody doesn't know, Kim Kardashian reached, I think it was a settlement. So she was fined by the SEC. They reached a settlement of, don't quote me on this, but it was something in the ballpark of like $1.5 million for promoting Ethereum Max, which to this day, I don't really know what it is. So I definitely have a problem with the way that Gary Gensler is approaching this, because the way that he's approaching this is he took credit for the whole Kim Kardashian settlement thing. And there's a few caveats here that I noticed. So first of all, it is not the norm for the SEC chair to be taking credit for something of this nature. And on the other hand does Gary Gensler not have anything better to do than to settle with Kim Kardashian over Ethereum Max, which was never really a problem in this space? Like, I don't know Ethereum Max. I don't know of anyone in my circle, my network, who has used or lost money to Ethereum Max. Is it a scam, or is it just, was it just the whole promoting of it that was an issue? Like, I don't really know. But what I'm getting to is not the fact that I'm an ignorant when it comes to Ethereum Max. It's what I'm getting at is that if I haven't heard of it being in crypto, fundamentally in crypto for a long time and devoting, every part of my day essentially to crypto, is it really an issue? That's what I'm getting at. Was Ethereum Max really that big of a fish to go after? And was it that much of a priority for the SEC and Gary Gensler? I just don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to really speculate, but I also wanted to say that I am pro-regulation. That makes sense. And I am pro-investor protection. So I definitely believe in the mission of the SEC, but definitely this seems to be more of a play on, just capturing more audience and getting more attention.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree with you there. And if I seem anti-regulation, I definitely like to clear that up. I'm not anti-regulation, but I am vehemently anti-poor regulation, and I'm anti-over-regulation. And that's, in my opinion, what's going on right now. There is a lack of proper regulation, and we're either being over-regulated or we're being regulated in the wrong areas. So, if you know me, I use this quite often. I use this analogy quite often, and it's that if my mind is not failing me, that e-commerce was actually illegal in the United States until 1993. So, you buying absolutely, your new pair of socks off of Amazon, like that would be considered illegal prior to 1993. And I think that this is kind of the moment that we find ourselves in now. We have a lot of madness. We have a lot of people trying to bring order to chaos in these markets. And the effect is not really what we would like it to be. And it's causing this massive overregulation. And that's why I compare it to, e-commerce being illegal until 1993, which, thinking about it now and thinking about how e-commerce shaped our everyday lives all over the globe, like it's laughable that something like that was even an issue, right? So that's kind of how I see it. And when it comes to the SEC, I definitely think that the SEC narrative of protecting investors is not in the best spot. Like there is a lot of heat for payment to order flow, right? Which this is a pretty big thing. Like if everybody remembers the whole GameStop, saga, and Netflix just released a 3-episode limited series about what happened with GameStop in the last few years and how Robinhood's order for payment flow and their deal with BlackRock, I believe, and how everything, shaped up. And there's a lot of this narrative that the SEC, but especially Gary Gensler, and this is my issue, that especially Gary Gensler is propagating about investor protection. And that's one of the narratives that he's using when it comes to crypto specifically, is we need to protect investors. And it turns out that the system is broken because the meme stock and meme coin investors are not necessarily the issue. And I think that's been demonstrated quite clearly. But the system in this regard, specifically talking about order for payment flow, right? Because Robinhood is not the one that's actually bringing your order to the market. They are taking a fee by sharing your order and giving it to a market maker, which in this case was BlackRock. And that's the real issue, right? So, I think Gary Gensler even went so far to say that, yeah, perhaps, payment for order flow should be illegal, right? And maybe those are the things that they should be going for. And not, Kim Kardashian, not doing all of these, pseudo influencer and spotlights that he has. He has this like desk series that he, there's this like pleasant music, and he's like, trying to explain short selling and things of that nature, and like these settlements to the public. So he's definitely trying to make himself a figure in all of this. But I don't know, it's just very weird. You want to move on to a bigger topic for crypto, maybe, than the SEC, because this is big news. Mango Finance being hacked yesterday at time of recording for $100 million. That's a Solana DeFi protocol.
Yeah, that is quite disappointing.
Yeah, let me just read a headline from CoinDesk. So, Solana decentralized finance platform Mango hit by $100 million exploit. Mango's MNGO token was down over 40% after suffering from the latest massive decentralized finance exploit. And of course, crypto Twitter is on fire. I've already seen allegations, obviously unsubstantiated. This is just, one of those allegedly moments where people are up in arms saying that where were the security audits? And from what I was able to ascertain, like that platform has been audited. There's a lot of, this is kind of a strange moment because there is obviously a lot of hurt people, which is horrible, but there are a lot of allegations circulating on Twitter that this kind of thing is basically developers leaving in exploits to happily retire in a bear market. I don't know whether that's true. It doesn't sound like it's true, especially if there's auditors involved. I would hate for that to be the case. We feel bad for everyone that's touched by this exploit, but it does seem to be happening quite often. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, Max, but where do we go from here? Like, it seems like a bridge or protocol, there's just so many exploits. Like, when do we take a step back and kind of reconsider, like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think one of the most important things going beyond security audits is just having talent on board that has the expertise around, smart contracts and such, solidity coding of this Ethereum and whatever is the same on the different chains. Anyways, the point there is, so in addition to security audits, having someone that is, I wouldn't say an expert, but is knowledgeable and can verify these things would be important beyond it. But also just keeping in mind, for example, the Polygon. When you bridge assets to Polygon, there are certain people that hold that can vote on certain actions being taken, and if those individuals are exploited, then that is an issue. Therefore, there's a central point of failure in human beings, and thus, as much as possible, trying to make things, trying to remove the human touch and trying to make things as much as possible on chain, I think is definitely something that should be considered. Or what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot what's been going on, with bridge hacks. Obviously, a point of comparison that we can draw here are centralized exchanges, because, back in 2015, 16, like these protocols, like we just didn't really have the bandwidth. Like we had ETH back then predominantly for this kind of stuff, and ETH didn't really have the bandwidth. Like I remember like ETH Delta and some of these other, like the first centralized exchanges, which were so bad. I mean, like shout out to ETH Delta, like Ether Delta, like they did a lot of good work, and without them, like we probably wouldn't have Uniswap. But, it was incredibly problematic trying to have this entire centralized exchange UI UX, but in a decentralized manner. Like it was just so hard to use. But what I'm getting at is, centralized exchanges have been here for a while. Some have gotten hacked, some haven't gotten hacked. The problem with centralized exchanges in this manner is we don't really know when they get hacked, if you know what I mean. Not everything is on chain, and they can always say like, oh, what's this? Oh, it's just a withdrawal. Like somebody withdrew $10 million, which happens, right? On some of the bigger exchanges. It absolutely happens. So there is a pretty large divide in how people approach hacks on centralized exchanges. Like I believe Coinbase and Kraken have never been hacked. Allegedly. Like publicly, they have never been hacked. Binance, the largest, has been hacked several times for pretty large sums. And if we're applying that to protocols, if it is in fact true that Coinbase and Kraken, and I think, since Coinbase IPO'd, and there's a very high level of scrutiny in order to IPO, I think that we can safely say that they've never been hacked, right? So it's doable. And I think the same goes for protocols. So not having any exploits, not having any bugs, not having any, I like the way that you phrased it, is the human talent, right? The talent behind all of this, to actually be aware and be able to do something, even if something comes up, is incredibly important. And I think that having this holy grail of let's do everything in our power to make sure that we are exploit proof, right? And there's one thing that is a bit problematic with this Mango saga. I definitely need to do some more digging. When I have some free time, I'm definitely going to do that. But there have been Mango Discord screenshots circulating where someone obviously, guys, like, I don't know if it's been doctored. I don't know how authentic these things are. This was just me browsing Twitter, so, could be BS. I don't know. But it seems that somebody outlined the issue. So pretty much the way that the hack happened, one of the users basically outlined this issue to one of the devs or to someone that's part of a team, which, if true, does seem a little bit sketch, right? Because if I remember correctly, it had something to do with inflating the price of the token, Mango, of the Mango token, and using it for collateral. So basically, if you inflate the price via a price oracle, and then you have, if you have 100,000 worth of Mango, but the oracle is spitting back data that it's, like 50 million, and you're using not 100K, but in fact 50 million for collateral, and then you're just doing whatever the hell you want on that protocol. That's pretty problematic. So if they were aware that this was the issue and they didn't do anything, that's probably the biggest point here, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay, off to happier news. We started on a down note. I think it's the Central European fall/winter outside my window that's getting to me, starting on these negative notes, man. So from much better news, AlepZero. We discussed prior to this podcast, and we Max, you and I talked about this, that we are going for the title of unofficial A0 podcast until A0 launches a podcast, and maybe we're going to speed that up for them. This is the AngelBlock podcast, your number one news source for everything AlepZero. So October 5th, Anthony, co-founder and COO of AlepZero, published an article on their blog on alepzero.org, if I remember the URL correctly, stating the current state of smart contracts on the A0 mainnet and when they are coming. So, Max, I'm going to let you take over in a sec. I'm just going to give, I want to hear your opinions on this. But basically, the article stated, and I'm shortening it, guys. Like it's available. Feel free to read it. It's, everything coming out from them is always a good read. But to answer the question, when smart contracts on mainnet, the answer is we could deploy them now. But long story short, they are waiting for Inc. 4.0 smart contracts to go live, since these are not going to be backward compatible. If they launch smart contracts on the A0 testnet, on the A0 mainnet, right now, they would be Inc. smart contracts 3.3.1, if I remember correctly. So they are waiting to launch the newest version of Inc. smart contracts before everything goes live. Because once they do it, there's no turning back. What do you think about that, Max?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not super familiar with Inc. smart contracts, but I can just speak to the general points. I think that it's really important to have a really good user experience for developers. That's a given. We know Ethereum, it's been around for a long time, and one of the key things about Ethereum is that there's tons of documentation on how to, how to code in Solidity, and that in itself also is important for newcomers that are coming into the space. So if Inc. also has been similar, where there's ease of use, there is documentation, thus giving developers a better user experience. I definitely think that it's worth the wait. And once again, I do need to read up a little more on the pros and cons of Inc. But I just think it comes back down to the general rule of thumb that we want to enable folks building to have the best user experience possible.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. So I think we all want to see smart contracts on mainnet. There's no one in the A0 ecosystem or community that doesn't want to see it happen. But I definitely applaud the AlepZero team for taking their time. One thing that people that don't build in this space, one thing they don't really understand is how much pressure there is to deploy, how much pressure there is for updates. And, we're happy to do the best we can. I just speaking from experience regarding just, AngelBlock, we work weekends. I work absolutely every weekend last 2 years. I know, Max, you do as well. A great example is when we were launching NFTs, prior to delaying the NFT launch, it was a local holiday. It was a bank holiday. People should have had time off, and, the entire team was on calls till 11 p.m. or midnight or even later, trying to figure out, can we launch this when we said we're going to launch it, or do we need to delay? So, when you finally join a community of a project like this, I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot of great builders. There's a lot of people that are sacrificing family time. They're sacrificing personal time. In some cases, they're sacrificing their mental health even. And, we're doing the best we can. And I definitely applaud AlphaZero because they are at a stage where they're pretty big, right? Like people know A0. And congrats to A0 for breaching 35,000 holders as of today, which is an amazing accomplishment. But with this amazing accomplishment, there comes a lot of downside. And that is the pressure of people that want you to deploy. Because a lot of people think, smart contracts, if I have A0, it's going to go up because there's more usability, there's more people in this ecosystem. And I think it's very, very important for projects and for builders to stay true to themselves and to do the best that they can do. And delaying it even so slightly, waiting for Inc. 4.0, I think that's the right move. And I just want to let everybody know that it's not easy. Like, your voices are heard. Like, if you're in a community, even if you're on Twitter, you don't have to be on Telegram. Even if you're on Twitter, you're commenting. Like, if you think that it is an echo chamber, that you're just writing something and it's like, nobody's going to read it. Like, people read it. Like, the founders read it. People from the team read it. Other community members read it. Like, we see what you're writing. And I just want to applaud A0 for sticking to their guns and just making sure that everything is ready and that they're pushing out the best version of this tech as possible. That's my mini rant.
Good one.
Thank you, sir. All right. Current state of fundraising. That's my next point, Mr. Maximiliano Torres. And
awesome.
I'm gonna do a little bit of clicking because I actually got a really interesting message. I got an email from PitchBook, so legit. It's not some rando emailing me. It's not some kind of unsubstantiated news source, and it's called the dry powder debate. So dry powder refers to an amount of unallocated capital in the market. And right now, apparently, everyone's talking bear market. Everyone's talking, oh my God, prices are going down. There's no funding, yada, yada, yada. But the dry powder debate. So basically what it comes down to, there is currently an estimated $290 billion available to VC firms, right? And the reason why it's called the dry powder debate is it's there, but are they using it? Max, what's your take on this? I know you have a lot of thoughts that are geographical, I would say, in terms of dry powder and VCs, and I want you to share them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one thing is it's pretty obvious that most of the capital available comes from the U.S. In particular, and if we drill down a little bit more, it comes from the Menlo Park region that we all know about, being Silicon Valley. So some of my thoughts here are it's multifold. So one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of VCs in this area typically invest in founders that are at close proximity. And I understand why they're doing this. One, it's via reputation. So if there's reputation, as in other individuals saying that, yeah, this founder knows what they're doing, and the team behind them also knows what they're doing, then it's just easier to have have that conversation, right? And thus, if they're in close proximity to these VCs, it's even easier to be able to close things out. So that's close things out in terms of coming to a seed or Series A or whatever they're focused on. On the other hand, if we just think about the reputation aspect, so then if there's a really if there's really promising startup and you're based out of the Americas, how do you know that this team in India, as an example, how can you verify this team in India, it can do what they're saying they're going to do? So basically what I'm trying to get to here is that I think one of the things that would be interesting is to, introduce what is a reputational system where all this verification happens, and instead of just doing the warm intro / checking in with your current contacts / relationships, it would just be nice to understand this in a more systematic way. So that's one train of thought that I have. On the other hand, I do believe that we're in a state where we have the infrastructure, whether that be in crypto networks or other pieces of it, where we can actually streamline things and at least enable some of that capital from this part of the world, being Silicon Valley, etc., to get funneled over to startups abroad. And some of, for example, AngelBlock. One of the things that we are doing is a due diligence process on startups, and thus there is some type of reputational standard. And I do think that we are definitely going to improve upon it, but it's a first glance at this startup is very promising. They fit. They have the team. They have there's some product market fit, signs of product market fit, or there is product market fit. The token economics make sense, and thus that just enables folks to be able to be more thoughtful of whether the team that, let's say, is located, I don't know, in take a pick in India or wherever they might be, it just gives more confidence as to that, these guys can really do what they're saying they're going to do.
Yeah, and another part of that, and thank you for seamlessly integrating AngelBlock into your answer, is if something goes wrong, right? What do we do then? So one of the things that, and this is actually the next point that I had, is what's going on with AngelBlock, right? Because I definitely do want to use this platform to shed some light into what we're doing, what we're thinking, which ways are we developing everything. And one thing that is not talked about a lot, I read everything our community writes, whether it's Discord, whether it's Telegram, whether it's Twitter. I read everything, trust me. And one thing that I notice people aren't really focusing on is this milestone-based way of deploying capital in tranches, right? So we talked about this yesterday, you and I, that what's the exact figure? I actually have it written down. So $2.8 billion was lost in rug pulls last year. So in 2021, that's almost $3 billion worth of rug pulls, right? And how do we protect against that, right? It's hard. It's very difficult to do that amount of due diligence as a VC when the startup is still building. And you don't really know when a thought enters a founder's brain of you know what, maybe this is too much work. I don't know what the thought process is of someone conducting a rug pull. I don't know if from day one you set out and you're we are going to rug and we're going to rug hard, right? Or is it after day 100, after you raise money or you're already building and you're this is way more, this is way more work than I thought it was going to be. I thought VCs are going to throw money at me. I want to exit and I want to exit big. So I'm not really sure what the thought process is there, but it obviously happens to the tune of $3 billion almost. And what I'm most excited about is we as AngelBlock, we have taken 2 years to develop the tools. And we started working on this before this statistic was made available, before even, this money was stolen. We developed a way to protect investors, whether they're VCs or angel investors or anyone else taking part in a raise, of, hey, this startup needs to meet particular milestones before the smart contract deploys any more capital, right? So the example that I give is if you're raising 10 million, right, and the raise is completed, you have officially raised $10 million. It is available and verifiable on chain in the smart contract. However, you can get, this is all customizable. You get 1 million, 2 million upfront. You have a burn rate. You need to pay salaries. There's stuff you need to do as a startup, but you don't need 10 million that month. No, if you need 10 million that month, that means some things that either you need a CFO or you need a better CFO, or you need a different founder. You don't need that much money then and there. And the way that it works is we have checkpoints. We have these milestones that are very easily verifiable by the investors, because at the end of the day, you want your investors to have faith in you. You want them to believe in what you're doing. But if you're not delivering, if everything is taking way longer, or you're simply not putting in the work, like, investors should have the option to, kind of pull the plug. And I definitely think that the infrastructure that we're building with AngelBlock, not only is it good for investors, but it's good for the startups. It's good for the entire space. I actually had one of the early VC conversations I had back when we were really, really early in building. Like, there wasn't a lot to AngelBlock. Like, it was me and a few people, right? And one of the offers that I got was like, hey, so, we want to put in X, right? And it was a pretty significant amount of money. Obviously, like, we're pretty early. Like, we thank you for, approaching us, yada, yada, yada. But can we agree upon this smaller amount? We sign an agreement for this amount, the whole amount. We agree on the smaller amount. And then if you deliver this, this, and this, we transfer the rest of the funds. And I was like, oh, that's actually interesting. That's how we're setting up, everything on our end, on chain, on the protocol layer. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Because I know, like, even if we have a month delay or whatever, like, I know what the end goal is. I know where we are heading, and I do not have an issue signing that kind of agreement because I know that we will deliver, right? And I think that the legit startups, the startups that really are playing for keeps and that want to do something cool in this space, they do not have an issue signing agreements like that. Maybe a few founders, have an ego problem and like, oh, what? You don't believe in me? You don't believe I can do this? But like, I don't think that the majority of startups have absolutely any issue with this. So I'm bullish. I remain bullish, even in a bear market.
For sure. And as we talked about, there's a bunch of dry powder out there. So
give me that dry powder. I have been deploying my dry powder.
Where?
My $600 of dry powder has been deployed this morning.
Where?
Obviously not financial advice. Yeah, no, but please don't listen to me. I'm just a random person on the internet. I'm just a crypto nerd. But I told you about this. Like, I'm developing a long-term Zcash position, and there's a few plays here. So obviously there's the privacy play. I don't like the regulators' standpoint, and I've heard it used quite often that like, oh, the anonymity of crypto. It's like crypto is not anonymous. Like, it's pseudonymous. It's not anonymous, right? Like, it's actually quite easy to see if someone is well known, what their Bitcoin or Ethereum wallet is, right? So pseudonymity and not anonymity, right? So everything that happened with Tornado Cash, I do not believe that things like mixers are predominantly used for illegal activity. I do believe that there are people that are living in countries where governments are highly questionable. And me saying highly questionable is putting it very delicately and very nicely. I do think privacy is a human right. I do believe that access to privacy, such as mixers, is of the utmost importance in crypto, especially if you are a person of a certain stature and you don't want to be prone to a $5 wrench attack. Because everybody talks hardware wallets, everybody talks, keeping your seed phrase nice and cozy in a safe spot. But $5 wrench attacks are a real thing. And if somebody doesn't know, a $5 wrench attack is when you go to Walmart or any other place and you buy a $5 wrench and you just beat someone in the head with it, you kidnap them and beat them more until they tell you where their crypto is. So I do think that privacy is super, super important, and I don't like the way that some of it is shaping up in today's environment. So that's part of my Zcash theory. The other one is Zcash is the okay, I don't want to turn this into Zcash podcast, but since you asked, and another thing is that apart from Bitcoin, Zcash is the single scarcest digital asset, right? And I just think that's very interesting. I also think that Zcash took a lot of flack over the years. I don't think that the current value is necessarily representative of its actual value. So yeah, I've just been taking the last month. I've been developing a Zcash position. I plan on holding it for the long term, probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We'll see how it goes. And I've been seeing that it's actually performing in a pretty stable manner in some market downturns. So I'm all for it. We'll see how it goes, but I definitely love the idea of what it represents.
Cool.
All right. Our final topic, we're going to keep this podcast a bit shorter. If anybody hasn't noticed, I've been toggling the video on our local feed here on and off just to make sure that we can hear each other without any major delay. Not the easiest, but we're doing this for you guys. So last topic we want to talk about, and another thing that I think is very underplayed, I would say, especially in a bear market, is the role of community. What is community and why is community important in all these crypto projects? And especially when we're talking Web3, community has never been more important than it is right now. And you live and die by the community that you develop and that you care for. And especially one thing that I'm really bullish on is seeing a lot of these really cool DAOs with especially low barriers of entry popping up and people really being able to do some cool stuff. I've actually been taking a lot of time to do a few deep dives into how some of these DAOs work and the way that they're engaging their community and the way that they're segmenting it in really interesting ways based on what value you bring to this DAO, right? And I think it's really cool. It's definitely something that I've been following for the last few years and, just developing a framework of how we want to structure it within AngelBlock. Max, any thoughts so far?
Yeah, sure. I just want to start off with back in 2021, early 2021, one of my main things was just jumping around in different communities just to kind of get a sense of what exists, of what was there and what was going on, how people thought, what were the motivations. And just to give you a few examples, for example, the Dented Fields was one of the NFT communities that, I went in, and it just went to show me a lot of, how certain projects run things and how the community itself, when they're aligned to the vision of that project, become extremely loud in terms of preaching it out to others that otherwise wouldn't have known of the project. So that's one example, just in terms of me jumping into these NFT communities, just learning from what's going on. But I also want to share another one, which was, I don't know if you're familiar with Kongcash. So anyways, it's Kong, and it's something that I joined because friends had recommended it. But as I joined this community, it turns out that it's just a bunch of really, really smart people, and talking about some just things that I would have never even considered. I don't want to get deep into Kong because this is not really just a promotion of it or anything, but rather just say that there's each community is different, and I just think it's really cool when one, the vision is defined of the project, and then the community stand behind it, and that enables to bring in other members into this community. Another thing is, as a lot of these communities have some really smart and interesting people, and by joining these communities, you get to learn a lot, and so that is really cool to me. So those are two of the main things that I've been seeing over these last 2 years. It's wild now.
I have two thoughts. First of all, feel free to share anything. This is if we like something, we're going to talk about it, right? And obviously nothing that we touch upon in this podcast. This is just two friends that, first of all, work together and are doing some cool stuff together. And, we love crypto. We're in it full time. So I think that if we like something, it shouldn't be seen as a promotion. I definitely don't talk about stuff that I don't use myself or I don't hold myself, but also don't take it as an endorsement. Anyone listening, please don't make your own decisions in this space, or you're going to learn the hard way, like probably both of us did. And I'm actually really happy you mentioned dented fields, because it plays in super well into one of our first topics that we discussed today, which was exploits. Because I don't know if you remember, I was at ETH Denver right around mint time, and I fell victim to the exploited Discord server on dented fields. And what happened there was a hacker was able to gain access, like admin access to the Discord, and right where you would expect the mint link to appear, he, spoofed another link, and it was just like everything looked legit, everything looked perfect, and it took the admins, the real admins, a few minutes to figure out what was going on, because the hacker actually he blocked them out of accessing any of the channels, which was incredibly hardcore. And I gotta, hats off to Dented Fields, because they did everything they could to recover and block this attack off. They even refunded everybody's money. I remember being online with you and like, oh my God, like I think I minted 5, but it was actually a scam. Yeah, so you never know what's going to happen in this space. It's crazy.
Yeah, Alex, you are welcome. Let's also say that I'm the one that introduced you to Dented Fields.
Yep.
And got you into that situation.
Really cool. But they did like resend the ETH, which is like there's no obligation from a budding project to do that, and that was pretty cool in my book, So shout out to Dented Fields for that, and I like the art. We like the JPEGs. We like the JPEGs here. All right, man. I don't want to keep you here too long. I want you to go to DEF CON, and I want you to be Max Torres at DEF CON instead of sitting with this sad Polish boy in gray, whatever the hell is going outside my window. So. Thanks for taking the time, Max. I really appreciate it. Like, we will try and do longer form podcasts, probably, when everyone's internet is a bit better and when you're not running around from meeting to meeting. I definitely want you to enjoy your time in Bogota and at DEF CON, and go talk to Vitalik some more. Tell him about AngelBlock.
Yeah. And also just a big thanks to our community. I mean, just really happy that folks are, engaged in many different forms, one of them being the podcast. So big thanks to all. And yes, I'm here at DEF CON. So I'm hoping to see some of our community members here if they're here. And other than that, just like really excited about meeting builders of the space. And trust me, they're like, people that have been building the space for years are here. So that's really cool to see as well.
Yeah. Oh, and officially, like we can say this now, speaking of conferences and community, we're officially diamond sponsors at Zero Expo. Like, we're the logo's live on site. So if anybody's in that area, in the Bay Area, come early November, like drop in, say hi. AngelBlock's going to be there. A big part of the team's going to be there. We'll have a stand. Come say hi, hang out. Talk crypto.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. Enjoy the rest of your DEF CON experience. We appreciate you, man.
All right. Take care.